Hi, this is Heidi from Tangaroa Blue Foundation. We run the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, which is a national network of community, industry and government all working on the removal and the prevention of marine debris. Since 2004, we've had over 150,000 volunteers helping us out at beach cleanups around the country, and they've actually removed more than 15 million items of marine debris. Now, not only have they removed that threat from our environment, but they've also recorded data on everything that they've collected. And we use that data to try and influence change, whether it's a policy change or whether it's a change of practice or design or material. And that helps us stop this stuff at the source so it doesn't actually get into the environment in the first place. So the first question we have was from Kate, and she said, "Hi Heidi, how can you tell if plastics found on the GBR are from local sources or have come from overseas on currents or fishing vessels?" Now, that's a really important question because if you think about debris coming from a local setting, the policy or the strategies and the plans are going to be completely different in stopping that item from ending up there than if that item had actually floated from another country or come off a passing cargo ship or fisheries boat. So particularly up in our remote areas, we can find that more than 90% of the debris that we pick up actually comes from overseas or offshore sources and not from the local community. And we know that because a lot of the items are still branded or have barcodes on them. So this is just a single-use plastic water bottle that we found here. And if we look at the barcode on the item, you can see that it starts with three numbers that are 930. And those three numbers actually indicate that the country of manufacture is Australia. If that item had the numbers 877, it would be from a different country. So we're able to understand, first of all, whether that item is actually manufactured in Australia or from overseas. So once we start to have a look at this bottle, we can start to find out how old it is with the markings of the expiry dates on it, any kind of branding, and of course the country of manufacture. And that will help us identify whether things are being sold in a local setting or whether they are coming from offshore sources. And one of the examples of how we actually use that was a few years back in Chile Beach, which is up in Cape York. We actually found a Vietnamese water bottle brand that we'd never actually seen before in Cape York. And we found a couple of hundred of them and they all looked really new. They still had the labels on it. The expiry date was still in the following year. So they hadn't floated from Vietnam. And we were able to report that through to the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources through their biosecurity team and let them know that that was a really unusual find. And they actually passed that information on to Border Force, who was able to use that with some ocean modelling and some additional data from us. And they actually sent out a Border Force vessel into the middle of the Coral Sea and found an illegal fishing fleet from Vietnam. So it's amazing what we can find from a piece of rubbish and how we can use that to track it back to the source. The second one is from Lexi. And Lexi said, "What do volunteers do with the debris collected? Is it recycled or is it sent to landfill?" So it's really important that when we do a beach cleanup or a river cleanup that we don't just move the rubbish from one point to another point. So what we try and do is to recycle as much as we possibly can. And we can do that with a variety of ways. The first one is to just connect with the local recycling system. So what would normally go into yellow recycling bin, whatever we can put into that, we do. We also connect with programs such as the Cash for Containers, where we can get a refund back from beverage containers. There's other items that can also be recycled. So we do recycle whatever we possibly can. And then we see what else can be upcycled. An example of that is actually this ghost net that's on the back of our car. So this is a ghost net that was found up in Marpoon, up in Cape York. The rangers up there were finding hundreds of these ghost nets every year. And so we were able to find one that was actually in still pretty good condition, and we've upcycled it to use it as the net on the back of our cars so things don't blow off. We also actually collect bags of what we call art supplies, and we sell them. So we have bags of cigarette lighters or brushes or toys, little bits of plastic or scraps of rope. And we've had some amazing artists buy that material from us and make some artwork that's been in national exhibitions. So we be very creative in trying to divert whatever we can from landfill. Unfortunately, there's always going to be a certain component that isn't at the moment recyclable that has to go there, but we really try and make that as small a percentage as possible. Alrighty, our third question is from Jess. And Jess wanted to know what is the most common item that we find when doing beach cleanups. And we get asked that question a lot. And I guess the first thing to say is that when we look at the data at a regional scale, the data is indicating that different things impact different areas. So there's not just one thing. And what we mean by that is if we go up to Cape York or to remote areas along the Great Barrier Reef, we actually find that the number one item is fragments of plastic. So that's items that are breaking up into smaller pieces of something else. So it might be a bucket or a container, but it might only be a piece that big. And so that's the number one item that we find in those remote areas. If we go to a city setting, somewhere around Brisbane or maybe Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne, we actually find that the number one item there are more consumer items. So things that are used in the local setting. So it could be plastic straws or plastic cups, plastic water bottles. And when we actually look in industrial areas, we find that the number one item are these plastic resin pellets. And I just wanted to show you these because you might not have ever seen any before, but you probably sat on one on the beach. So these plastic resin pellets are little beads of plastic, and they're actually used to manufacture plastic products. So if you want a plastic bottle or you want a plastic container, you would buy a whole heap of these beads and you would manufacture it into whatever you want. Now, why are these ending up at our beaches? Just basically bad housekeeping. And so what we find is they can fall off trucks, or a spill maybe happens at the factory, and it just enters the stormwater drain if it's not cleaned up. Now, they're really light and they float really easily, so they can actually be distributed far and wide. And about 80% of beaches that we actually look for these pellets, we'll find them, even in some of the most remote places in Australia. And so they're quite concerning because they resemble fish eggs. So anything that would eat a fish egg potentially would ingest these plastic resin pellets. Alrighty, our next question is from Nicole. And she said, I've heard that discarded fishing and ghost nets are one of the biggest contributors to marine debris. Are there any initiatives in place to educate, hold fishing vessels responsible for the proper disposal of fishing nets? And that's also a really good question. And we already talked a little bit about the ghost net on the back of the truck. So there is a lot of work being done in the fisheries at an international level. And they're even looking at things like chemical marking fishing gear so they can find out exactly where they're being lost. Because you can imagine that a fishing net might be made in South Korea, but a Vietnamese fishing fleet may have bought it. So it can be hard to track just based on the manufacturing point. There was a bit of an incident over in Indonesia in 2016 where a lot of ghost nets were actually being released out of the Arafura Sea. And that the way the currents worked actually washed them straight into the Gulf of Carpentaria. And the Mapoon Land and Sea Ranges and also the Dimaru Ranges, which are on the other side of the Gulf, were collecting hundreds of these nets every year. And most of them actually had parts of turtle and dugong and shark caught in them. So they could really see the impact that they were having on our wildlife. And they found that the Arafura Sea was an area that had a lot of unregulated fishing in it. Now, the Indonesian government actually got a new fishing minister a few years ago, and she actually put a stop to a lot of this illegal fishing and kicked out over 7,000 illegal fishing vessels from the Arafura Sea. And over the next few years, the Mapoon Rangers actually saw a massive decrease in the amount of ghost nets that they were finding washing up on their beaches, which is a great indication of how this kind of fishing can stop. In Hawaii, for example, they actually use the nets to create energy for the island of Oahu through a recycling program there. And our last question is from Matt, who wanted to know what the most unusual item of debris is that we found. So pretty much anything that you could list, we've probably found once, but some of the most unusual items are a breast implant. We actually found some false teeth, the leg cast of someone that had a broken leg, and even an unexploded sea mine that we actually had to call the Navy in to come and detonate to make sure that it wasn't going to cause any danger. So thanks so much for having me talk to you guys today. I just want to talk a little bit about our Reef Clean project. Its focus is on the removal and the prevention of marine debris across the whole of the Great Barrier Reef. Next week, we'll be releasing the 2019 report. We collected just under 25 tonne with the help of over 2,000 volunteers just in that year alone. So once we can all head back out to the beach again, there'll be lots of events happening across the Great Barrier Reef, and we'd love to see you out on the beach. But in the meantime, you can download the Tangaroa Blue data collection app, and you can contribute your own data to the database to help us track this stuff back to the source and try and really reduce the amount of marine debris impacting the Great Barrier Reef. So thanks so much, guys. Stay safe and see you on the beach soon.